One of our investors told me, he was like, from like 7 to 9 a.m., you own my house. Like, we're just orbiting around your product. Like, I'm burning coffee, my wife's burning coffee, my kids come down, they're burning coffee. Like, I'm having another one before I'm out the door. That's what I'm talking about. So that end user relationship is huge. And then you double down on that because now we have an insiders community. We're like, yo, tell us what you want. I want to learn from people that have our machine, use it every day. What do you want to see? What else can we do? Do you know how excited they get? You know how many customers have my personal cell phone number? It's obscene. It's not like, I wouldn't advocate for it, but it's crazy. And then they go out and spread the gospel. They become the evangelists. And that's where I'm like, okay, like that to me is when you bolster all of your classic best practices on paid media, but stuff like that, that's how you start creating unfair advantages.
Welcome back to another episode of Chew on This. Today we have CEO and founder of Terra Cafe, Sahand. First of all, Sahand, I've been able to have the pleasure to meet you at multiple different founder dinners, at different conferences, events, and every time I've always spoken to you, it's just been a breath of fresh air in what you're working on. You've always been super humble in your approach. You always talk about the challenges first, and then you talk about, all the great things too. And so it's always refreshing to meet other founders that have a similar mentality to us. So wanted to first of all thank you for coming on and spending time here for our viewers. But for the few viewers who don't know you, maybe you can give them a little bit about your background and how you got to creating a hardware and creating Terra Cafe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to, give a quick background on myself, but I just want to first thank you guys for having me on. It's great to be here. Great to reconnect always. I started the company about like 6.5 years ago now. I originally was actually working in electric vehicles in kind of more of a finance capacity, but
I didn't know that.
That was because before kind of switching gears into the startup space, I was actually working in investment banking. So I was doing kind of that classic M&A private placement work for tech-enabled businesses, but always with like a history of just entrepreneurial ventures. And it's not even entrepreneurship in the sense of like a venture-backed business, but just building stuff, right? So just creating. And it's almost weirdly, kind of addictive once you start and realize you can kind of create your own version of the future. It's almost hard to stop doing it. So I came out of school, worked in finance, knew I wanted to kind of switch gears eventually, join an electric vehicle startup. Just by virtue of how early stage it was, I got so much exposure to what it takes to carry something from like ideation to mass production. Like that entire journey was technically, employee number 7. That startup scaled to, 70 through 5, scaled through 5 countries. It was based in Germany, which was a great experience just in general, like personally and professionally. But yeah, kind of bundle all of that experience with my love of coffee, since a kid. Just it was like hot drinks, coffee, tea, and like dried fruits were like the social nucleus of our upbringing, coming, from a Persian household. And yeah, I mean, I really experienced the problem firsthand in terms of starting the company. I was coming back home looking for an espresso machine for myself and the family, and we were kind of, looking at the options that were out there. And that's kind of where I got like hit with a sledgehammer in terms of learning that in terms of like modern coffee consumer preferences, everybody was going for higher quality. Everybody was going for, more selection, more artisanal brews. Latte surpassed drip coffee as the most ordered drink in the US. But when it came to the optionality to brew that at home, you either had to get a minor or a major in baristology, or you had to kind of default to the classic pod-based systems. And I was like, okay, this is interesting because you can take a very design-forward approach to a category that is a very emotional, visceral purchase, but you can actually build a technology moat over time that builds a really powerful and double business.
It's incredible. I remember when I had first met you and I looked up the brand. Obviously, in the world of like CPG and what we always see, like we're used to seeing people like creating supplements or beauty products or whatnot, and here it is. It was like it was a $1,700 coffee machine, right? And
that wasn't hard enough for me. I had to make it even harder.
And so I'm still curious. Walk me through the journey. I mean, it looks like you had a great experience at the EV company to be able to walk you through what the nucleus of building something like that is. But like I read a review that someone said like it's like the Porsche of these machines, right? Like it looks absolutely stunning. It's beautiful.
They didn't say Ferrari? Okay, no, that's cool. No, that's cool. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm so curious. Like, do you have to go and get like someone who creates like product, like I mean, a hardware like that, and what's that process look like? And then, did you know all the nuances that goes into like the shipping, the weight, all the parts of
no.
building a business. So yeah, walk us through the journey of initially deciding something that felt very passionate and probably problem solution driven.
Yeah.
Rather than like, hey, all the mechanics of a business.
I really wanted to just understand the building blocks of what it takes to build this business. And I've always, like I said, ideating on different, ventures and opportunities where I'd see like white space. Okay, is there really something there? And my triangulation always before starting anything was kind of like the passion, the competency, and the opportunity. You got to have all three. Like I shouldn't be running any NFT crypto startup. Like I'm just not the guy for it. I don't have the competency or any, the background in that terrain. But I loved coffee. I definitely had this rough understanding of hardware, and then I saw this really interesting white space in terms of nobody really advancing it because it was so hard.
Sure.
What that looked like in the beginning was really simply I got used machines because they're expensive, right? That was part of the opportunity. They were so expensive that to experience the products for myself, the few that existed, I bought used machines. And I just took them apart. And I looked at all the building blocks to build these machines, and they're all using the same kind of heart, the same engine, the same internal component. I'm like, oh, so they're commoditizing the main elements of this device. That gets really interesting, because then from a product sourcing component selection process, you can start to pick and choose which areas you want to improve and take a much more iterative approach to that.
I like that.
I gotta be honest, it's still crazy difficult to bring something, to life like this. Hardware complexity is non-linear. It gets exponentially more difficult the bigger it gets and the more parts it has. But I was also just really lucky in my old startup that I was at before starting Terra Cafe. I just was surrounded by engineers and designers that were like, they're just amazing human beings, my best friends. And we all helped each other out starting our own things, and they helped me a lot. Probably had a 6-7 figure sum of free services from close friends that were helping me on industrial design, UI UX design, mechanical engineering, you name it.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, is this something where I guess you kind of took apart machines, kind of put together something that you had an idea of, and then brought it to like a manufacturer and said, hey, like, can you do this? Like, what does that look like?
I mean, I basically started as a sourcing project where I had a close friend who was a sourcing agent that was living in Asia, and she was helping out. I also then was, just because I was like, I have to learn so much about the category, I kind of wanted to triangulate it from a number of people what the best path was going to be. So I actually ended up kind of going to classic sourcing markets and, contract workers that could help us find as much optionality as possible to get off the ground. And like, I just remember, the 3D printed parts, like kind of machine parts, whatever you can get as a sample. I remember I had 2 prototypes for the first machine. I just moved back to the US. I moved to New York. I had 2 prototypes. I had no money for marketing. And I just was told, or I think I just probably through watching TV and stuff, thought okay, Soho's supposed to be the cool neighborhood. I just knocked on doors in every single shop on Spring Street, Prince Street, Green Street, you name it. And it was like, who's going to let me serve coffee to your weekend crowd? You knock on 50 doors, one person says, yeah. You come in, you start serving up coffee, strike up a conversation, and then you would question yourself, is there an opportunity? Is my thesis correct? Is the hypothesis by which I'm investing all of my time and money, is it a sunk cost, or is there really something here? Every single time I went out there, it just validated even further the fact that we were tapping into something.
Impressive.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, I guess, product market fit, right? You've gone and done your, research phase, tested the product with the market, understood that, okay, maybe there is something there. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you have a product that's definitely on the high end of price points.
Yeah.
Where did you think you were going to initially market the product to, and how were you going to attempt to do that?
I think we kind of just caught the heels of the entire e-com renaissance that happened. I know, with all the kind of OG D2C brands that kick things off, I think everybody was kind of finding their vertical where they could tap into and have, even if nothing else, an initial beachhead where you're like, all right, I know I'm solving this problem for this particular segment or subsegment of customers. So when I was looking from a channel standpoint, I was like, okay, the most efficient, lean, process of getting out the door and testing whether or not there was product market fit and was there product market fit at scale, right? Because you can get out the door and kind of almost have a little bit of like a mirage in the desert, and you can kind of get like a little bit of like a false positive.
Yep.
With a really low ceiling on your business, and that can be, I can only imagine how many categories people have made that leap and kind of gotten hit in the face with that. But I had a lot of conviction in the fact that I was tapping into coffee, and just as far as the second biggest commodity by value in the world, knowing that over 2/3 of Americans are not coffee consumers, they are daily coffee consumers, daily. Seeing that big of, just an overall TAM that I was going after, regardless of whether or not I was approaching it from, the higher end segment first, the luxury segment first, I just knew, okay, if I'm tapping into something with this first product and we're building a strong brand, the ability to precipitate that into the entire category and use that as your springboard to build an indelible brand is really high. Because now you're an authority. Now if I started with a little demi-tasse or a little cup and I told you tomorrow I'm starting an espresso machine company, you'd be like, all right, man, like that's, maybe hold your horses, sequence it out a bit. But I was like, that is a rich territory of fertile soil to build up the company. And, every data point I got was further validating that like people were looking for somebody to graduate away from the classic pod-based systems.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you've now, going back 6.5 years ago, you've now come up with the product. You've found a way to engineer and build your first version, right? And I believe you're on your second version now. Or? Yeah. Right. So you built your first version, and now you realize you have to go and sell this.
Yeah.
Right. So now what does that look like? Did you draw up a website and you started ads? Were you going into retail, Amazon? How did the different channels work out for you?
Yeah, I love kind of the like conversation of like, whether or not you want to go quick into diversifying the channel expansion, or if you really want to double down on what's working. We were already seeing a lot of success on the DTC side. Okay. So it made sense for us to make sure that, that is going to be, if nothing else, kind of like first base for us, that we know we're there, we're comfortable, we've established that, but we know that obviously that's not the end state, right? We want a home run. So what we did was we had a pretty clear discipline, and sequential strategy of scaling that up, but really in a way that didn't overextend or overreach from like a capitalization or a resourcing standpoint into new channels. We knew we needed to test things out. The main thing I was looking for early on was I need to see pull factors, right? And we actually had two very interesting pull factors, which made it hard to decide where we were going to jump first, given that we didn't feel like we were in a position where we could do both at the same time. Was we had heavy retail inbounds and we had heavy organic search, branded search traffic on Amazon. Wow. The thing was, for us, the V2 was the unlock for Amazon because it's a connected device. We get to hold on to that end user relationship where we can figure out how they're using the machine, how are they liking it, how can we better help with troubleshooting, maintenance. You get to have a longer term relationship with that customer, so then you get to have that like long tail of consumables revenues, but also allows us to do more for the end user.
Smart.
All of that was critical from the unlock perspective. And then from the retail side, it was like, we can't be everywhere all at once. We got to be judicious. And we wanted to make sure anybody we pick, we need to think about them advancing us either through coffee, design, or tech. One of those three. I mean, those are the three legs of the stool that we're going to stand on in the long run.
I think that's really smart. When you look at, and I don't think we've had, maybe we've had a couple of guests that have had high ticket products like the Hydro and a few others, but like when you look at a product that is high ticket, right? I mean, again, what we're used to seeing is products that are $40, $60, $80. You're out here selling product that is $1,600 or $1,700. Now, when it comes to engineering, like what's your CAC gonna be and like how you're going after the market and stuff like that, how is that process, and are you sometimes still figuring that out? Because I feel like with all the different changes that happen, how do you guys figure out like the true unit economics, and you don't have a product that's easily giftable, so I'm curious how you guys are navigating through what seems like very simple marketing methodologies for most of us. It feels like you can't really copy paste.
You definitely can't do the rinse repeat on everything. It's not going to work. And that also, by the way, applies to the channel side of it too. Like if you want to just kind of show up everywhere, you're going to quickly find that there are going to be some frontiers you can't expand to, and there's most of them are going to be a huge uphill battle.
Yeah.
And I think for us, I mean, look, the entire kind of like CAC LTV or AOV to CAC ratio that we have to look at, I mean, definitely governs our paid media tactics, our performance marketing tactics, and how many things we invest in. But I mean, we are fortunate that I think we have kind of the confluence of two factors that really help us. Is one, we do have a decent amount of white space. Again, like when you have a hard category to get into, that means from a competitive landscape, I'm basically dealing with 5, 100-plus-year-old legacy brands. Yeah, there are unfair advantages when you're that old and you have that much distribution. There's also unfair advantages I get from a nimbleness perspective in terms of going after them, being able to kind of, just move faster with the latest technologies, using the latest tools, being able to have that kind of end customer relationship. And that also kind of goes into, the second point, which is ultimately for me, like I just have a much tighter end user relationship. That relationship translates into feedback into my product, right? 100%.
So for example, like for Avi, right, where we have, anywhere from like a $60 to like an $80 AOV.
Right.
That's still considered like an impulse purchase, right?
Yeah.
I can still run an ad today. Somebody will consider it for less than 24 hours and pull the trigger and buy, right?
Yeah.
Then you got the people that will buy within a week. And so the majority falls within that 1 to 7 days, maybe a month out, maybe a year out, but it's a small percentage. For you, that consideration window is massive. I would imagine.
Super different, yeah.
Right? So
you'd be surprised. There are some people, there's that kind of like top quartile customer that honestly just falls in love, and it's all amygdala. It's no prefrontal cortex. They're just like, it's beautiful, I want it.
Here's my card, boom.
But yeah, absolutely. Generally speaking, the consideration window is going to be a lot longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that you said that there is a white space, it's not like people are looking for it.
Yeah.
Right. You also have
Which is a blessing and a curse.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So my question is when you think marketing strategy and when you think about ad creative and how you're actually marketing the product, right?
Yeah.
What goes into the story that you're trying to tell? Like, how do you guide people down a journey? Where does it start and where do you think it ends?
Meaning, like, what do we do well through our paid media that allows us to stand out?
Yeah.
I think, look, it goes kind of back to what you were saying, which is it's a little bit of building the plane as you fly, because I think that we've scaled a lot over the last 5 years. And what worked for us really well in the early days, we realized it's not that you ditch it, but you do need to kind of expand upon it over time. And so as we've grown and gone through kind of different stages, and we're actually also appealing then to different customers, I think that we've learned different messages have, different resonance factors. The rationale, the post-purchase rationale for why they bought the machine has changed over time. It doesn't ditch. It doesn't ditch the original criteria. And you'll see that those variables stay present, but they are not the main staple of your diet anymore. And so that actually has shifted a lot of our communication strategy. It's also shifted the platforms that we're showing up on and testing, how we choose to test different areas is, okay, like, is CTV actually more prevalent in terms of, driving interest? Is it more effective from a top of funnel storytelling perspective to then translate that into our middle bottom of funnel transaction oriented marketing? Also from the consideration period, we have a heavy community oriented approach, heavy. When we look at the post-purchase and we see 1/4, if not sometimes as high as 1/3, depending on the week, 1/3 of customers are buying this because of word of mouth.
Interesting.
Yeah,
insane.
Wow.
It's really high. And we kind of found out anecdotally early on, but now empirically, when somebody in the neighborhood gets our machine, you kind of become like the king or queen of the cul-de-sac. You're like, everyone's like, I was gonna
see that. You can feel that from that.
Yeah, couples go over to a house party, a dinner party, and they're like, we're not getting that other machine. I want that one. I want the cool one. It's like, that's what I kind of felt early on when we started. It was like, there was this beautiful, rich, physical and temporal real estate of that, that morning coffee that I didn't feel like anybody that was in the space currently was appreciating and respecting. And I was like, all right, we're going to be that player. I love, one of our investors told me, he was like, do you know from 7 to 9 a.m., you own my house. Like, we're just orbiting around your product. Like, I'm brewing a coffee, my wife's brewing a coffee, my kids come down, they're brewing a coffee. Like, I'm having another one before I'm out the door. And that's what I'm talking about. So that end user relationship is huge. And then you double down on that because now we have an insiders community. We're like, yo, tell us what you want. You have to be careful, right? Because everybody who runs an e-com brand knows, like, the more platforms you're present on, a lot of times they kind of just become like either CX or troubleshooting.
It just dissipates into something else.
Right. I was like, we need to have an area where it's not, look, I want to make sure we're taking care of everybody that needs help or has whether existing or prospective customer, answer your questions. But I want to learn, from people that have our machine, use it every day, like, what do you want to see? What else can we do? Do you know how excited they get? You know how many customers have my personal cell phone number? It's obscene. It's not like, I wouldn't advocate for it, but it's crazy. And then they go out and spread the gospel. They become the evangelists. And that's where I'm like, okay, like, that to me is when you bolster all of your classic best practices on paid media with stuff like that. That's how you start creating unfair advantages.
Chew on This is sponsored by, if you're juggling your marketing ops between different platforms, then listen up. Ash and I were in the same boat as you were not too long ago. We were using an email service provider and an external SMS provider to manage over 200,000 customers. With numerous email flows like post-purchase, abandoned cart, win-back automation funnels, running these communications on several platforms was killing our potential impact because we just didn't know how to optimize the process on each channel. We needed a new approach, so we reached out to our community. The #1 recommendation was SendLane, so we had to check it out. And let me tell you, it's surprised us on every level. They took over the entire migration process, transferring data, forming up emails, and making sure that we didn't miss a beat. And now with their Move Now, Pay Later offer, it's easier than ever. You pay nothing up front, no hidden fees, and no unexpected bills. So if you're worried about the cost, the disruptions, or the sheer amount of work it's going to take to migrate your current marketing ops, SendLane takes care of everything and you don't pay until they're done. We highly recommend SendLane, and since we've moved, we've seen incredible ways to optimize all our channel strategies in one place. Now, let's get back to the episode.
There's one piece I want you to get a little more tactical on for the listeners and viewers. So if I and I've asked this question a ton, where it's like, are you running post-purchase surveys for your brand? And I would say maybe 60%.
No?
60% do. Maybe 40% don't, right? Okay. And it's like it's a lot of people, and it's a lot of information that's super valuable that you're not able to leverage, which you should be, right? Yeah. And so the fact that you stated the stat that 30% of customers come in because of word of mouth, right? Yeah. So tactically, right, as an owner of the business, you now get that information. How do you act on that? What would you do to actually, all right, now you've learned this, what do you do with that information?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm going to just say one thing to the first part of that, which is like, for those who are not running those surveys and not collecting that information, it's one of the most powerful tools, especially if you're kind of like on the early stage and you can't pay for all the various attribution tools yet. Yep. It's a really simple way to get valuable information. Because think about it, even if they did buy off of a different type of ad, if they associated their purchase with a certain touch point, that's also valuable to know, right? So that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, I totally get it. We have so many things we have to manage and juggle, but I really would double down on doing that at all stages. I think as far as acting on it, look, it does depend on what the data is telling you. So it is a little idiosyncratic to like what are the stats actually saying? Is it a perfectly even split? I doubt that's the case. It's the same way with channels, right? I don't think I've ever met anybody that's 33% D2C, 33% retail, 33% Amazon. I don't think I've ever heard of that existing. If you're out there, you're kind of a unicorn case. But I think it's super important to look at what the information is saying. For us, I mean, like what I'm saying about the word of mouth side, well, that gets really interesting in terms of how much I'm investing in the community building efforts for the company, because a lot of times that isn't going to be the main kind of exercise you're doing as a marketing team. But in reality, that's that thing, like, again, if you take it out of your training, if you take it out of your practice, you're going to wonder why you're not seeing the bigger gains that you want to get. Why have you hit a kind of glass ceiling, so to speak? But that was what, the data told us. It's like, okay, well, some people might say that was obvious, but you know what? There's so many areas and so many kind of opportunities to try out new growth vectors for your business. It does get hard. And so it gets hard to discern exactly where to focus. That kind of stuff can help you prioritize. And in a landscape where people just are having to operate with leaner and leaner staffing, leaner and leaner resources, rigorous prioritization is table stakes. You don't have a choice. So you better know where people are finding you, what's getting them to transact, and how you want to double down on that.
We're huge fans of building community. You know, we've been growing one on Facebook group for the existence of our brand, but we also don't run into that many people who come on our pod that are building community.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear when you do find somebody that is. So tell me a little bit about what that community looks like, who's fostering it, how involved are you in it, and then what are some of the larger benefits that come out of it outside of, you know, being able to spread the ability to sell your product more, and where is it hosted?
Yeah, functionally speaking, just the way it runs right now is our CX team does run. It's our CXO, Kate. She's incredible. She's the one who's kind of leading the charge. Her and her team are doing an amazing job. Just kind of from the initial implementation to carrying the ball forward. So that's just functionally how it works. The platform that we're currently on right now, which we're still trying to figure out, you know, exactly if we want to migrate this elsewhere, is on Facebook. We do have a community that kind of skews slightly older, just given the price point of our product. So as a result, we found that Facebook has worked quite well for that. There has been some, you know, inquiry or kind of desire to push it over to Slack, and you know, we're happy to make that transition. It's really a matter of where can we get the most people that we're actually going to contribute. Correct. And that's one thing we've said is like, this is not meant to be just a troubleshooting channel, and this is not meant to be just people passively there. Like I actually want people
and just hitting some arbitrary number.
Exactly. Right? And then in terms of, you know, the engagement, one of the things that I love is, you know, we set up webinars for, you know, first one was with me, then is with our CTO, just with our art director, our designer, people pitching ideas, like trying to, it's not just, you know, about, you know, having a relationship to sell them more things. It's really ultimately like, I want to learn and I want to build a direct connection with you. I'm trying to embody that. It's more important to have 100 people love you than 1,000 people or 1 million people like you. You know, if you like something, you don't really ever say much about it. If you love something, you can't stop talking about it. And it's like, that's the kind of force multiplier we're looking for. So whatever I do anywhere, whether it's out of home or digital, I get that amplified by the people that are just so beyond excited that they're connected with us. So, you know, look, if you want to send me a photo of your new puppy next to the espresso machine, or your cat, a lot of cats love to sleep on top of it because it's warm. You know, like I love it. Share it. Like, you know, you got a new glassware, new mug or something, and you wanted to, you know, try a new recipe with a new cocktail. I love it. Like, just keep feeding that. And, you know, people, you'll be surprised just like how much they want to go out there and spread the word for the company. And that's, you know, look, Mr. DeLong is not going to get on that ever and do that for his community. So I was like, all right.
Not at all.
So throughout the journey, you mentioned that you guys raised a good amount of capital to grow the business. For us, we done something similar, not crazy to the extent that you guys have done it, but walk us through that journey of kind of, all right, well, we know we need cash. Here's where we're going to go and get it.
Yeah.
But then actually utilizing the funds, I think, is something that you kind of have an idea of prior going into it. But then when you actually have the cash, you're like, well, I almost don't want to touch it. So walk us through that entire journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think for anybody starting anything, and regardless of what stage you're at, I think you kind of need to have the end state figured out of what you're trying to build towards, and then work backwards in terms of the milestones you need to hit to ultimately get to that outcome, right? And that will very quickly kind of translate into the financials in terms of like what targets you need to hit, like what, you know, fundamentally, what business are you in? Are you in a recurring business? Are you in a one-time sale business? Like, what do you need then as far as just like fiscal discipline and financial health to get to the next stage? And so I think me just first of all having like a finance background has helped a lot in terms of the articulation of why we're raising at a given point in time and what we're going to achieve with that capital to get to that result. You know, then what does that mean in terms of the next stage in our life cycle, right? So being able to paint a very clear picture both in words and numbers is a really important skill set. You know, and in terms of the investor selection, you know, it's like what they say about friends in life. It's like, you know, good friends make the good times double and the bad times half, and bad friends make the, you know, the good times half and the bad times double. So it's really important to understand that selection criteria and, you know, who you're kind of working with, but ultimately it is the kind of classic making decisions in the early stages about, the level of experience they have in a given category, the stage experience they have, understanding what it takes to get, to the next level, whether or not that's going down the kind of alphabet soup fundraising path, or it's, this is going to be a one and done. We have that clear pathway to profitability. So yes, while we raised kind of, a decent amount in terms of, just what the overall e-com landscape looks like, we've actually been very judicious and lean compared to our competitive set. And that's one of the things I always told people when they invest in TK, I want to show you that I'm going to stretch that dollar further than anybody else. Like, I'm going to get the most, just as far as results, bang for your buck. Like, I just want to show you, paint a picture for you where you, one, are proud as an investor, but two, kind of, following through on the results. And it kind of goes actually back to what you said at the beginning. Is like, I'm going to always tell you the challenges before I tell you the W's and the wins. There's so many wins to celebrate. I get to celebrate more W's because of the way we address the challenges. And that's tough too, right? Because even from a team dynamic standpoint, sometimes it can be tough where, people can start to wonder, like, why, we're always feels like we're always trying to address the next challenge, or we're trying to take head on the next, thing we have to, the next problem we have to solve. You end up in a lot of firefights and like a little, I say all that essentially to say, like, that fundraising journey is, you need to know what you're signing up for. And you need to also set that expectation clearly with the team. And it's something that I've been trying to do better, just as a leader, doing a better job of articulating that to everyone in terms of what the expectations are for the business and how hard it is going to, be to get there. But that we have a plan, and we're going to share in that upside. We're going to share in that success together.
I'm curious. So one of the, I know theme of the discussion has been like challenges and maybe some learnings. I don't really think the word mistake is really used by many people now, because it's like everything's a learning, right? But maybe you can share some of the challenges you faced, some of the learnings that you didn't know you were going to face, and came through the quote unquote mistakes. But whether it's right now or over the course of the journey, I think one thing that our viewers really like is when, people are sharing things to watch out for. People are sharing things that, that they can hopefully miss. So if you have anything to share there in your journey, or a few things.
Yeah. The reason I'm kind of chuckling on that question is my mind does immediately connect back to that whole founder mode, manager mode conversation. There was a period of scale where I did feel like the guidance I was getting was very heavily like, you're the founder and CEO, you're the visionary, you need to, delegate out, and you need to think back about the vision and the obviously operationalizing the vision into a strategy that, sets clear milestones. But in the spirit of that guidance, I think I actually tried to pull out of the weeds. And I didn't really have the articulation of what I felt was kind of being more restricted in an ability to add value to the entire team, and actually feeling more siloed. And as a result, it metastasizes the problem where, the further away you are, the more kind of things lack structure. The more that it lacks structure, the more, more kind of confused you get. And then again, that just becomes a vicious cycle. It's not to say that like you need some sort of like maniacal manage every line item, every detail all the time, because it's not tenable either. But I think a lot of startups, especially over the last like 24, 36 months, came to this realization that this whole kind of like build this heavy OpEx, build this kind of like bigger org, because that's an investment, which it can be. But I think we were kind of getting the ratio a little off. And I think that trade-off was somewhat missed. And that was something I had to contend with in terms of what stage we were at, how far was I pulling back, because I thought this is what you're supposed to do. This is what delegation looks like, when in reality, you're not really able to add the direct value that people are looking for. And frankly, in some instances, retain the culture that you started the business with, in terms of, getting to that next stage and really keeping that as a tight nucleus. So I'm sure there are more mistakes to reflect on, but that was the first one that came to mind.
That was great. That was great. What does the next 5 years look like for TK? Whether it's the expansion into retail and a few things you're working on, but what do the next 3 to 5 years look like?
Definitely, we have this vision where, Starbucks took every corner, we're taking every countertop. So,
like that.
we have a lot of exciting things in the pipeline. Like I said, the TK2 just keeps getting better with time because we keep taking feedback and rolling out updates for the machine, so people get to have new features built into their machine that, essentially there's no planned obsolescence built in here.
Cool. Yeah.
And then channel expansion is going to be critical for the business. So, we know our customer base is 3 times the national average to buy through traditional or specialty retail. So meeting the customer where they're at, it's a highly experiential product. So they're going to want to give it a try. And then, we have some other exciting things in the hopper, pun intended, in terms of
there you go.
Their products.
Love it.
Yeah. And with that, man, just thanks again for having me on.
No, it's awesome.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right before we let you go, love to close out the episode with one thing that you want viewers and listeners to take back and implement in their business today. What would that one thing to chew on be?
Or sip on.
Sip on.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was like, dude, gotta know your audience, man. I love a lot of the kind of like team building, leadership oriented stuff, and I like a lot of the things we talked about. But I do feel like one broader through line, which pertains to everything from sales and marketing to team building, is kind of like not letting perfect be the enemy of good. I think is one of the most important things to reflect on. I think the more and more founders I talk to, the more I see people kind of like beating themselves up about getting something wrong, or like, I could have been more efficient with this. I could have, focused better on that. And look, it's always healthy to do a postmortem. And maybe this is a level of reflection and rumination that it's not so much about, a marketing tactic to implement, but really ultimately in terms of keeping an even-keeled kind of head on your shoulders as you're executing through incredibly, volatile, tumultuous times, is you can't let perfect be the enemy of good, and frankly can't let perfect be the enemy of done. A lot of times, we kind of get in our own way the most. And kind of having that level of equanimity is one of the things I felt like I wanted to keep advocating for, and other founders that I think are doing a great job, but I oftentimes find that they're just kind of like beating themselves up and really are, frankly, have a lot to be proud of.
Chew on that.
If you want more from us, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, and check out the website chewonthis.io.